I'm talking to Fergus Ewing, the Scottish Energy Secretary. I wonder if you could explain that 2012 has had some successes in renewables, what part wind has played in that?
Yes, certainly. 2012 was a very good year for renewables in Scotland, and most especially wind, because we saw a huge investment in Scotland in many wind projects, totaling £1,000 million in renewables, and we have 11,000 people working in the sector, and of course we saw renewables, largely hydro and onshore wind, generate 39% of the electricity in Scotland. Many people said that wouldn't happen, so we're on our route to achieving our targets, but of course we're primarily concerned with making progress in the next year or so.
And with the referendum for Scottish independence coming up next year, how do you maintain a stable market for investors?
Well, a stable market is essential. We work closely with the UK. We think that post-independence there should continue to be an integrated energy market. The grid is to be strengthened so that we can quadruple the exports of energy down south. And many will know that the Ofgem warning about electricity supply in the UK with very limited, if any, spare generating capacity means that England needs electricity from Scotland, and especially offshore wind, to ensure continuity of supply. And therefore, if you like, Scotland and our renewable projects, especially offshore wind projects, require the demand from consumers across the UK. But consumers across the UK require the electricity from Scottish projects. There's a mutual need here, and no one serious would suggest that dismantling the current integrated energy market would make any sense. And therefore we're confident that the needs of the consumers and the industry will be met in a stable market, and one where we want to see more renewables as part of a variety of sources of supply.
What is your response to the UK government's suggestion that the incentives might not necessarily be continued if there is an independent Scotland?
Well, I don't think this is really serious, because plainly there's a great, we're in Manchester here, there's a great many companies here in England that want to do business in Scotland, in these projects in Scotland off our shores. There's trade that flows both ways across the border, and frankly, without Scotland's electricity, there's a real danger that Ofgem has highlighted last October that the lights will go out, there will be blackouts, there will be power shortages down south by 2015. That's what Ofgem warned last October. Since then, more coal-fired power stations have shut. So, assuming that the English government the government in the UK, in London, wants to avoid power cuts, then they will need energy from Scotland. We're happy to ensure that it is provided, and that requires the current arrangements to continue. Otherwise, the whole thing unravels, and security of supply would be seriously at risk.
Even with the addition of onshore power coming from other parts of Europe, do you think Scottish Offshore still has a big future? Well,
yes, because you see there's relatively limited capacity to import other electricity. There is a connector to France, but the gigawattage is pretty low, so that cannot be the supply. And in any event, French generators, nuclear generators, are supplying Germany and Belgium, who have their own problems. So the suggestion that somehow the government in London would want to sever dealings with the companies in Scotland that are working with companies in England, do business in France instead, when France is supplying Germany, and the capacity to import electricity is pretty low, that suggestion, I think, is really made more as a matter of political argument than real argument. So, we think that these arguments are political saber-rattling and are not really serious. They're part of a political campaign, and we work closely with the UK government to try to bring forward the EMR and to end the swithering, the delay, to end the investment hiatus, and ensure that the companies that are ready and willing to provide the UK with an offshore wind industry with enormous benefits to jobs in the economy, to the climate, and to electricity generation will be a reality.
There is one additional potential threat, the discussion of a lot of onshore wind from Ireland. Again, that's the early days, but do you see that as a further future threat?
Well, you mentioned threats, but I don't really see things that way. I mean, what I see here in Manchester is loads of cooperation between companies based south of the border and north of the border. David Brown Gearboxes down south working with companies in Scotland, Steel Engineering, Found Ocean and Samsung in Methil. SSE working with many companies down south. Scottish Power working with many companies. These are trading links. Why would any government want to disturb all these things with some sort of scorched earth policy? This is ludicrous. Of course, we cooperate also with the Irish government, and actually there is even in the EMR bill a provision which allows the UK government to pay foreign government subsidies for the continuance of the ROC regime through a different form, EMR. So actually the UK government, the London government, envisages that there should be the power to continue the operation as is post-independence, and that, I think, will be what will happen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.